This book had me so excited. Then it all went to Hades. Hi everyone, I'm Rainbow Heart's Villain Thoughts, a bookworm who loves reading gay romance and retellings and backstories of villains. In fact, I love these books so much I thought, hey, why not make a book review channel that focuses on these types of books? So here we are. Now real quick, today's video will be structured differently from my two previous videos, The Haunting Between Us and Heartless, as I watched the video today and realized I was doing this completely wrong, so I'm hoping this is more to your liking and more to people's standards. So, that being said, today I'll be giving a spoiler-free review of Amanda Meuwissen's steamy fantasy Greek mythology novel, Last Courtesan of Olympus. Now, this book is the first book in the three-part book series, Lover of the Gods. And this book, along with the other two, is strictly intended for adults only, due to the steamy context and adult themes of this book and the other two. So, viewer discretion is advised, or reader discretion, I guess in this case, is advised for this book. So this book follows a young Greek man known as Achios, a devoted servant of the Greek goddess of love Aphrodite. He believes he'll become the courtesan of the highest priest in his faith. Yet, right before he's given, he is instead taken to Mount Olympus by Zeus, god of lightning, the sky, and king of the Greek gods. There, Achios learns he must choose which of 8 Greek male gods he will become the courtesan of after testing each of them out. Now, the writing style for this book is quite interesting, honestly. And let's start with description. This book is very descriptive of certain settings and areas and how the Greek gods look and, yes, feel. I love how descriptive it was. It honestly felt at times like I was actually there in the book, for better or worse. Because trust me, certain parts in this book I really wish I was not there for, which luckily I wasn't, but still, you know what I'm saying. So yeah, descriptive wise, very descriptive. But dialogue-wise, this book isn't heavy on the dialogue. In fact, I kind of wish it had more dialogue than what was given in the book. Most of the wording was description or Achios is mental thought process, not outward dialogue between him and the different gods. And I was a little disappointed in that. And it really feels like the description is there in dialogue, but the balance between description and dialogue is just not there. There's more description than there is dialogue. You guys might disagree, and of course, feel free to, but it's just how I feel, unfortunately. So yeah. Dialogue in this book to me kind of felt like an afterthought. Um, but next, the tone. The tone of this book is very heated throughout the entire book. And because of this, you do know from the get-go, this is a spicy book. This is a deep, steamy book. And as a result, you know from the beginning what you're getting into. However, I will say one of the tones is a bit off, kind of. Achios is a courtesan. He studies, he learns how to please the person he's serving, whether it be physical or verbally or emotional. Achios knows how to deliver. And because of this, sometimes when he says stuff, the Greek gods kind of doubt it and they're like, oh, he's a liar. And honestly, as a reader myself, if it wasn't for the fact that Achios goes out of his way to point out, hey, I'm not a liar, I'm just being honest, Or at times even admitting to himself that he's kind of like fluffing what he's saying out to look more praising than what it is. I would have thought Achios was a liar or just kissing up. And I think Miss Amanda does a fantastic job of doing that, pointing out through Achios that he's not lying, and also having the Greek gods doubt him because, for one, he's immortal, and for two, some of them do carry some pretty big heartache before he meets them. So, obviously they're not going to be too trusting of this random guy. So, um, but the tone overall is steamy, not romantic. There is very little to no romance in this book. I would say no romance at all, you know, but it's not what this book's about. It's about steam. So, next up, I want to talk about the characters. Now, the only character that kind of occurs throughout the book is the main character, Achios. Each chapter is about a different Greek god, so they're not constantly in this book. But Achios is a very interesting main character. And to start off with, Achios is scared to death when we first meet him when he goes to Olympus. That one wrong move will result in his torture or demise by the gods before him. After all, the Greek gods are not known for being the most kind, caring, considerate, or especially merciful people. If you've ever read Greek mythology, you know they're quite cruel and harsh, creep beings that don't care. If you upset them, you're done for. Um, so he's terrified at the task in front of him because he knows he has to pick one of these 8 gods, and the other 7 will possibly come after him. So he has to find a way to kind of avert that, to make sure the gods he doesn't choose do not feel hurt or spiteful towards him. Well, at the same time, all of this, remember, Achios is a courtesan, and he prides himself as the best of the best. So Achios is also having to deal with the fact that he has to uphold the tenets of Aphrodite and the worshippers of Aphrodite, his patron goddess. And he has to prove to himself over and over and over again that he is the greatest courtesan, that he can do this, that if anyone can please these gods, it's him. So a very important thing with a lot of books is being able to relate to the characters. And when it comes to Achios, I myself was not able to relate to him, and I think that's not necessarily a bad thing with this book. The fact of the matter is, Achios is a character who is not meant to move you. He's not meant to change your opinion or your mind on anything. He's not supposed to reveal a deep meaning, just like Last Courtesan of Olympus isn't there to do that. Amanda, they're very, very obviously at the beginning of the book pointing out that this is not the kind of book that's going to move you, the kind of book that's going to change your life. This is a pure steam fantasy book. Um, and because of that, I feel like Achios is a fantasy in one way or another to the reader. Whether you want to be him or be with him, Achios is a fantasy character all the way. He's not someone that most of us can relate to. Um, some can, probably, possibly. I, for one, didn't. um, but no shade if you do relate to this character. Um, so yes. But the thing is, I noticed about Achios while reading this is on the outside, Achios always tried to have control. He always tried to be this calm, collective person who was very, seducing towards these gods. Like, I am the greatest courtesan. But inside, throughout the book, he's panicking, he's worried that he's going to mess up, that he's going to lose favor of some of these gods and get punished afterwards if he doesn't choose them, or that during his time with them that they'll smite him anyway, just, because they want to. So he's constantly worried and kind of scared, but he doesn't want to show that. Um, but despite that, I wouldn't necessarily call him a complex character. We know what he wants. He wants survival. We know how he intends to get it. There is no deep meaning, really, of why he became a worshiper of Aphrodite. I don't think that's ever brought up in this book. There is no talk about family or past. Just he's the greatest courtesan in his mind. So, you know, um, so I will say that he's not a very complex character, to say the least. Um, the next thing I want to talk about is the fact there is zero romance in this book. Any and all attraction in this book is physical, not romantic. It's not to say some of the Greek gods don't have romantic feelings of hurt in them from previous relationships, because they do. I'll get into why that's important that they do a little later in the video, but they definitely are not in love with Achios. And Achios, from the beginning, is stated to be this character that's not looking for love. He's looking to serve Aphrodite. And to him, for his way of life, personally, not all courtesans, but for him specifically, he doesn't believe in a one partner relationship. He doesn't believe in falling in love with someone and being devoted to just them. And well, that's not necessarily a you can't find love situation. Achios is the character that openly is like, I don't want to be tied down to anyone. I want to be free and open to do what I want to do. So yeah, that's Achios. So yeah, there is very, again, little exception to that rule, or not rule, but situation where all the feelings are physical attraction. Not None of them are really romantic, at least between Achios and the Greek gods. However, they are always receptive of each other, even if not at first. Um, like with the first second, third chapter, that kind of happens. I won't get into detail because this is spoiler free, obviously, but it's not what you think by the wording. Um, so, but it's always consensual. Um, there is one point which I'll talk about later that was questionable. Which may be a warning to y'all. I skipped that chapter when I found out that, so but we'll get into that later. So, yeah. So next up, I want to talk about the themes of this book. Now, this is going to be rather short. This book can come off as nothing more but a heated book, honestly. And the way I've talked about it already, it definitely sounds like that. However, there is an underlining theme in Last Courtesan of Olympus, besides the steamy, heated parts of the book. And that is fixing the broken. Now, I can't go into detail on that because, again, this is spoiler free, and going into detail would definitely be a spoiler territory situation. But yeah, that's it. um, I can say, however, that Achios does more than just tend to physical needs. So, next up is strength. This is the things about this book that I feel were strengths to the book that I enjoyed and liked. And that of course the strengths of this book was definitely in the accuracy of the myths, the unique chapters between each character, and the warnings before each chapter. So, and more in depth here. First off, let's start with the accuracy of the myths. So, Greek mythology and mythology in general is no stranger to modern day adaptations. We have the Clash of the Gods, Clash of the Titans movie series. We have Percy Jackson. We have Song of Achilles, Circe, the Hecate the Witch book. Um, we have so many books based off Greek mythology or some kind of mythology. I'm sure there's plenty out there about Norse and Roman and Egyptian as well. But not all of these books tend to be accurate to the myths that we know and love. Some of them take a lot of liberation with these myths. But oddly enough, Last Courtesan of Olympus feels like it doesn't do that. There's only one thing in there that I feel like Amanda, she definitely took a little bit of liberation or liberties, not liberation, sorry, liberties with. But that wasn't a bad thing necessarily because it pushed the story forward without being too myth breaking. So there is reference to the myths as well. It's not just taking the Greek gods. There are certain myths that are brought up in one way or another. So I really enjoy that. However, you don't have to know the myths to enjoy this book. You don't have to be a Greek mythology reader to enjoy this book. It might help, but I feel like if you don't know about Greek mythology, you could definitely go into this book because the myths are explained within the book that are pivotal to what's going on. And so, yeah, you can always do that. um, so next up, sorry, let me find my place. I have notes. I have notes here, and a little tired. So, let's see here. Yeah. All right, next we have the difference between each god slash chapter. So this book actually covers 8 Greek gods, as I've said before. And the cool thing is that each chapter kind of is its own god encounter, which is really cool. And I love how, you know, Amanda, they are really good at making each chapter feel completely different from the last chapter. Um, I didn't read any chapter and think, oh, this is just like the last chapter or the chapter before that. No, each chapter was different. And there's a key reason for why these chapters were different. But I'll get into that a little later. But for now, just know the chapters were different, which was really interesting. Um, and yeah, it was something that really got me by surprise. Um, each chapter felt like it was the first chapter of the book in a way, not in the way of it being kind of flat, but in the sense of it could have been their own stories separately. And they were put together in such a way that it feels kind of like reading multiple books um, that are very short, but they are connected. So, and honestly, at times I would have felt like I was reading completely different books if it wasn't for the fact that one, this is about the Greek gods, and for two, Achios was the main character throughout this whole book. So, um, and last for strengths of this book, I have to say it would definitely have to be the warning before each chapter and a key feature of this book that I've never seen before. Now, this book has content warnings specified. That's not a word. Sorry. Specifically for each chapter. So each chapter has its own specific warnings due to the content in each chapter being different. The adult themes do change, and it's cool because Amanda, she is letting you know, hey, this is in this chapter, you might not like that, so you can skip it. And you're probably thinking, Rainbow Hearts, why would I skip a chapter? That is blasphemy in the world of reading. Well, that brings me to my shell shocked part of this book. I've never seen this in a book before because typically an author wants us to read the book from cover to cover. Even the acknowledgments, the author notes at the end, they expect us to read the entire book or at least the entire story. And the thing about this that really blew my mind is Amanda, they are flat out telling us at the beginning that you can skip chapters. You can skip any chapter in this book and still understand the end of the book. And I love that because, again, certain chapters in this book have certain adult themes that are not okay with certain people, that definitely break a boundary or cross a boundary. Um, and it's just something that a lot of people may be uncomfortable with. I know I had to skip two stories or two chapters in this book because I felt extremely uncomfortable with what was in those chapters. And I was still able to finish the book and feel like I got the full experience. So that is something that is really interesting to me. That you can not only skip any chapters you want, but that Amanda, the author, literally is telling you, hey, you can do this. You can skip the chapters. It's fine. You'll still get the book is full meaning. Now we've talked about the strengths. Unfortunately, it's time for the weaknesses. Now that I've discussed the strengths, it is time to discuss the things that I feel the book kind of fell short of, or that I just didn't like. And to be fair, though, there was only one thing I didn't like that I can say without full on spoilers, and that is unfortunately the plot, or more so, the lack of plot. Um, Now I know this might sound like a spoiler incoming, but in truth, the plot isn't really the strength or really even the point of this book, I feel. Um, which took me by surprise and made me a little disappointed, definitely. But because of that, I feel like talking about this for the weakness isn't a necessarily spoiler. But if you do feel like that's the case, you can skip to the next part, which is pacing. Um, but anyway, so yeah, weakness. The plot just didn't feel like it was there. The plot kind of took a backseat to the more heat of the book, the more spice, and steamy parts of the book. The plot was just kind of there in the background as, that awkward friend that doesn't like having their picture taken, but you're taking the picture, a group picture with them in there, and they're kind of in the back, hiding their face, thinking, why am I here? That was the plot of Last Courtesan of Olympus, honestly. It was that shy, awkward friend who did not want to be in the group photo, but, they were forced to be. Um, and that's not to say that Amanda is a bad author, because again, this is a steamy adult gay book. And therefore, when getting into books like these, you will have instances where the plot isn't the strong pushing point like with other books. And I did not know this when I first read this book, grabbed a copy of it. So that's on me, admittedly, but the plot just didn't seem like it was there. It wasn't any kind of real focus. Or if it was there, it was very weak and not really strong enough to get my attention. It kind of felt like background noise in the end. And honestly, it didn't click with me at all. It wasn't until the last two chapters that I even remembered the plot. And while that's not entirely the book's fault, it just felt like a ghost. It kind of felt like ghost memories in a house that someone else is living in. Like they're there, but you don't really notice it because you can't really see the memories. Um, unless you know they're there, you know. So next up is pacing. So I am admittedly a bit torn when it comes to this part of the review because, in truth, the pacing is pretty quick. This book is not long by any means. It's, I think, over 100 pages or a little a little over 200 pages. I can't remember, but it's not long. It's not a long book. However, um, for me, near the ends, like the last couple of chapters I read, it kind of felt like it was dragging on. At that point, I was just done. It felt like a chore to read this book, and I really wanted to just say, okay, I'm done. I'm tired of it. I don't want to read this anymore. This is a book that has tired me out, and I just want to finish this book and put it away and never read it again. Um, and again, I do not think that is anything against Amanda themselves because this book was very popular when it came out. Um, in the category this book is in, it was a number one bestseller. So yeah, Amanda's a fantastic writer, fantastic author. It's just, the plot and the pacing wasn't really for me. So, um, yeah, it kind of felt like it dragged on near the end. And when I finally got to that last chapter, it didn't really feel like an accomplishment or like a journey had been done. It felt more like an afternoon of events. And it's nighttime and I'm tired. I just want to go to bed, okay, and forget the day that I went through. Um, so next up is spicy discussion. Now, this will have no explicit language, just so you know. I'm not going to go in any detail or use explicit language to talk about this for any book that has spicy discussion in it. And certain books that don't have spicy discussion will obviously not have this in them, the book reviews. But, so we do have to talk about the spicy part of this book. Um, and again, I will not go into any detail. All I will say is this book is very spicy, but it almost feels like it's a spicy bone rather than a spicy piece of meat. The plot, the story, the character development, that's the meat of any story. Any kind of spice is like a seasoning sprinkled on the meal, on the meat. Um, but this just really wasn't there. Um, you know, it kind of was dull to me. I didn't really the spice was there, but without proper emotional connection to it, I kind of felt like it was just cheap, for lack of better words. It felt kind of cheap to me. Um, and I'm sounding so negative. I'm trying not to be completely negative because I know this book will have an audience. And I don't want to put down on people who will enjoy this book, but my own experience is the steamy parts felt kind of cheap. cheapened by the fact there was no romantic feeling attached to it. That's just me, though. I know a lot of people would disagree about that, so that's fine. Um, so next up, I want to talk about my emotional experience with this book. And again, I felt kind of excited for this book when I first saw it. I mean, after all, it was about Greek gods. But as I read this book, that kind of fell apart. As I said in the beginning, I had hope for this book, but in the end, it went down to Hades' realm and never came back. I was definitely surprised by certain parts of the book, and there is definitely no denying that. And I think a lot of people will probably be surprised by a certain chapter and a certain god in this book, and the way Amanda wrote them, which again, it's not necessarily myth compliant, but it's also not non-myth compliant, if that makes sense. It's kind of an open to interpretation part of mythology. But anyway, um, but I just didn't have really any strong emotional connection with this book, and honestly, the surprise parts of this book just weren't enough to keep me interested. By the end of this book, I already had a feeling what was going to happen. And again, at the end, I just didn't care anymore. Um, I just wanted it to be done. I was really frustrated with this book. I was disappointed, and that made me sad because I really had high hopes for this book. So, it is what it is. Next up is content warnings. Again, I'm not going to go into any inappropriate detail or spoiler territory, but I do feel as this is an adult only spicy book, I feel like I should give some content warning for this book before you buy it. Um, I didn't really look at the content warning before I bought it, and again, I'm thankful that you can skip chapters because good gravy. There are certain things in this book that made me extremely uncomfortable. And while there are a whole slew of warnings before each chapter, well, not a slew of them, but like so many that there's a lot of warnings in this book. I will go over some that are kind of eye-opening and made me uncomfortable. So yeah. Um, So those are pain for pleasure, knife play, tentacle usage, beast slash monster play, character death, and dubious consent. That last one especially was a big no-no for me. And the thing is, the first two, they are part of one chapter alone. Um, and then the second two set, the tentacle and beast monster, um, the first part of that is one chapter, and then the second part is kind of two different chapters, two different gods. Um, the character death and dubious consent is one chapter together. Um, so it's not, none of these are the entire book. Typically I find if one chapter has specific warnings to it, those warnings are not repeated in future chapters. So you don't have to see this book and think, oh, this is what it's all about. No, but if this is something that is going to upset you, which is understandable, I understand completely, um, and makes you not want to support this book specifically, I understand, and you might not want to buy this book. Now, again, the dubious consent chapter I skipped because that made me extremely uncomfortable and is not something I wanted to read. But, you know, you know, you can skip it or you can skip this whole book. Either way, I wouldn't judge you. Um, so yeah. um So there's the content warnings, and there is again a bunch of others. Excuse me. There are a bunch of other content warnings within this book, but they're chapter by chapter by chapter. So I would recommend doing your own research on this book and seeing the chapter warnings and deciding whether or not this is a book for you and more in depth. Um, because this being YouTube, there's only so many things I can say as content warnings with this book that won't get me in trouble. So, um, yeah. But anyway, I gave you the ones I could give you that I felt were really alarming. Um, but there are others that you may find just as or a little less, but still alarming. Um, and so, yeah, and if you don't find most of those alarming, no judgments with the first couple. Everyone has their own things. So, um, but there were some of those that definitely made me say, nope, I'm skipping this chapter. No, thank you. So, all right, next up is the big finale for this video, final rating and who should read. Now, with everything being taken into consideration, I have to give this book a 2.5 Rainbow Hearts. The plot just wasn't there, and that's what I'm mainly looking for. The character's drive was just lacking for me, and sadly that led to me not enjoying this book. However, the author, Amanda, she does a fantastic job of description. Description is definitely her strong suit in this book, and I love that. Um, it was just so vivid and realistic. I think she did a fantastic job, so I'm not giving it a 1 star. I'm going to give it, or sorry, 1 heart. I'm going to give it a 2.5. Um, but again, the missing plot, um, just I can't give it higher than that, unfortunately. Um, Next up is who should read this? And honestly, if you're looking for steamy literature, that maybe is or isn't about Greek mythology, and that I mean, if you're looking for one specifically about mythology or Greek mythology, or you don't care if it's about that, this book is for you. Um, but if you're like me and you're more of a plot person, you want emotional connection to a character or book, this book is not going to be for you. This is the kind of book that's going to make you uncomfortable. It's going to make you squirm. It's going to make you want more than what we're given in this book, unfortunately. So, um, but yeah, that's about it for Last Courtesan of Olympus. Now, real quick, if you enjoyed this review, please consider hitting the like button and please consider subscribing if you haven't. Both help the channel, but if you want to do one or the other and not both, I completely understand. Either one honestly helps. If you do hit subscribe though, make sure to turn on the notification bell. Make sure to hit all content and not just the one it's automatically set to, because in my experience I don't get any notifications from channels that I don't hit the all content for. So yeah, or you could probably do just videos or whatever you want to do, but don't do the custom, because when I click the notification bell, it goes straight to custom and I don't get any information, any notifications about that channel for some reason. So also, let me know in the comments down below, is Last Courtesan of Olympus a pickup or a put down for you? Will you be reading this book? Have you read this book? And if so, what were your non-spoiler thoughts on this book? Um, Did you agree or disagree with anything I said? If you did disagree, please keep it respectful and please don't go after each other in the comments. Um, and if you haven't read the book, are you going to pick it up? You don't have to specify why you're going to pick it up for the record. I don't need to know why, necessarily, but at the end of the day, um, I'd love to hear from you guys. What do you think? Is this a good book or a bad book? Um, anyway, thank you so much for watching this video. I will be back this Friday, hopefully, reviewing The Courtesan of Apollo. It's not the second part of the God Lover of the Gods series, but it's a standalone spin-off of Last Courtesan of Olympus that follows Achios' best friend. Um, so I'm excited for that. Kind of. The book, just watch the review. Anyway, thank you guys so much, my fellow bookworms or nerds, whatever you want to be called, or book lovers. I'll see you next time. Stay safe out there. Drink plenty of water. Um, build up that energy for more reading. And of course, keep reading. I'll see you next time. Bye.